She arrived at the community hall without thinking much about the evening. It was a small event, nothing fancy, just a local music night where people came to enjoy simple performances. She wasn't there to play or take part in anything. She only came to support someone she knew. She expected to sit quietly at the back, clap when needed, and leave without anyone noticing her. The hall wasn't very big, but it was full of warm light and chatter. A small stage stood at the front with a shiny piano placed right in the center. People moved around, greeting each other and settling into their seats. Instruments were being tuned, and soft laughter filled the air. She looked around and smiled politely, trying to remain unseen. She chose a seat close to the back wall. It was quiet there, and she felt safe. Music had once been a big part of her life, but that part of her had been pushed aside for years. She didn't mind it staying hidden. Something about performing still made her heart heavy, so she avoided it whenever she could. The event began with small groups coming up to sing or play. Everything felt peaceful. She listened closely, enjoying the soft guitar sounds and the gentle voices. It reminded her of days long ago, but she pushed the thought away before it grew too strong. After a few performances, the event host walked up to the microphone with a cheerful smile. The host liked keeping the crowd involved and often asked for volunteers. Tonight was no different. We just brought in this beautiful new piano, the host said while gesturing toward the instrument on the stage. Before we continue, it would be nice if someone could play a short, simple melody so we can hear how it sounds in this hall. People looked around, but no one raised a hand. Some smiled, some shook their heads, and some pretended not to hear. The host waited, but still no one stepped forward. She relaxed. There was no chance she would be asked. No one here knew she could play. She hadn't told anyone, not even the friend she came with Dot, and suddenly she felt a hand lightly tap her arm. "You should try," her friend whispered with a grin. "You know enough to play something small." She shook her head quickly. No, I'm fine sitting here." Her friend laughed softly. "Come on, it's just a simple tune. You don't have to do anything big." Before she could stop her friend, the host's eyes turned in their direction. "Do we have someone there?" the host asked with an encouraging smile. Her friend lifted a hand and pointed at her. "She can play a simple melody." Her heart jumped. She wanted to disappear, but the crowd had already turned to look. People clapped lightly, encouraging her. Heat rose to her face, and she wished she could hide behind her chair. The host gestured again. "If you're comfortable, please come up." Nothing complicated, just a short tune. She hesitated. She didn't want attention. She didn't want questions. But saying no in front of so many people felt just as awkward. So she slowly stood up, trying to calm her breathing. She walked toward the stage, feeling every step. The hall wasn't large, but the walk felt long. When she reached the piano, she paused for a moment before sitting down on the bench. The polished surface reflected the stage lights, and she felt a strange mix of fear and familiarity. The host stood beside her with a smile. "Whenever you're ready," the host said quietly. She nodded but didn't speak. Her hands hovered over the keys. They felt slightly cold, and the feeling sent a shiver through her. She wasn't used to being watched anymore. She didn't like the idea of so many eyes waiting for her to start. People whispered lightly among themselves. "Does she know how to play?" Someone said. "She looks nervous," another voice whispered. She heard them but tried not to react. She took a slow breath and focused on the simple tune she planned to play, something gentle, something anyone could handle. Her fingers touched the keys, and she began with small, steady notes. The melody echoed softly in the hall, filling the space without rushing. It was nothing special, nothing impressive, just a basic tune meant to show the piano's sound. But as she played, something inside her shifted. It was small at first, almost unnoticeable. The notes reminded her of long hours she once spent in front of an old piano, practicing until the world outside disappeared. Memories she had pushed away began to surface, carried on the sound of each note. Her breathing slowed, her shoulders softened. The nervous tension in her hands faded just a little. For the first time in a long while, the piano didn't feel like a burden. It felt familiar, like a voice she once knew. She kept playing the simple melody, but her mind drifted to moments she hadn't thought about in years. Moments where music had felt safe. Moments where she could express things she couldn't say aloud. She didn't plan to do more than what was asked. She wanted to finish quickly and go back to her seat. But the small spark inside her kept growing. The longer she played, the more her fingers remembered what they had forgotten. The piano responded softly under her touch, warm and inviting. She didn't notice the way the crowd began to quiet down. She didn't see the host watching her with growing interest. She didn't see her friends sitting forward in surprise. All she felt was the music, and the strange comfort that came with it. She finished the simple tune, but her hands didn't lift from the keys right away. A part of her wanted to stop. Another part asked her to continue. Just a little, just enough to feel what she had once loved in that moment of hesitation. She sat still, unaware that something inside her had already changed. She didn't know that this small, unexpected request would open a door she thought she had closed for good. She took another breath, deep and steady. The hall was quiet. Too quiet, and for the first time all evening, she realized the crowd was waiting not for the end, but for whatever she would do next. She sat at the piano with her hands resting lightly on the keys, trying to steady her breathing. The simple tune she had played still lingered in her ears. She knew she was supposed to stand up and return to her seat now. That was what the host had asked for. That was the plan. But something inside her wouldn't let her move just yet. The hall was strangely quiet. She could feel the stillness behind her, the way people were watching, waiting. It made her heart beat faster, but not in the same nervous way she felt before. This time, it was different. This time, it felt like something was pulling her forward, instead of holding her back. Her fingers stayed on the keys, even though she told herself to lift them. She tried to convince her mind that she should stop, that it wasn't her place to do anything more. But her hands seemed to have their own memory, their own longing. They remembered what it felt like to move freely across the piano, to follow a melody that wasn't planned. She took in a slow breath and let her fingers drift gently from one note to the next. Not planned, not practiced, just something soft, something her heart formed in the moment. The sound was quiet at first, almost shy. A few scattered notes, like testing the air. No one in the crowd said a word. She felt their attention settle on her, but this time it didn't scare her. It felt warm, like a soft hand on her shoulder telling her it was okay to keep going. Her shoulders relaxed without her even noticing. The notes grew into a small pattern, a familiar shape her fingers remembered. She didn't know when she had last played it, but it came back with surprising ease. Her mind drifted into the memory of a room she used to practice in. Sunlight falling across the keys as she played for hours without thinking about who was listening. Now, on this small stage, that same feeling began to return. Slowly at first, then stronger. A melody formed into something fuller, something more emotional. It wasn't loud or showy. It was gentle, almost storytelling in its movement. Her hands moved with more confidence as the familiar rhythm settled into her muscles. She didn't notice the whispers in the audience fade completely. She only noticed the way the piano responded beneath her fingers. Each note vibrated softly in her chest, like a quiet echo of something she had forgotten about herself. She closed her eyes for a moment. Not long, just enough for the world around her to fall away. The hall, the people, The lights, they all disappeared. The only thing left was the piano, and the calm that grew inside her with each sound. She opened her eyes again, and her fingers began to travel more freely. She played a second pattern, a bit deeper this time, almost like a reply to the first. She didn't plan it. The music shaped itself naturally. Behind her, someone shifted in their seat. Someone else held their breath, but she didn't notice any of it. The melody flowed into a soft rise and fall, like a tide brushing against the shore. She found herself leaning slightly into the keys, feeling the soft vibration through her arms. Every note felt like it carried a small piece of her past moments of quiet joy, moments of loss, moments she never talked about. Her friend watched from the back of the room, surprised and speechless. The friend had only heard her play tiny bits before, nothing like this. This wasn't a simple tune. This wasn't someone just testing a piano. This was someone revealing a part of themselves they had kept hidden. The host stood near the side of the stage, eyebrows lifted, watching closely. It was clear no one expected this shift. Not the host, not the crowd, and certainly not her. She had walked up shy, unsure, and now she played with a softness that drew every person into her world. She didn't think about impressing anyone. She didn't think about how she looked, or what they might say. She let her fingers speak, and the piano responded kindly. The melody grew more expressive. Still calm, still gentle, but deeper, stronger. She added a low note that rang through the hall like a quiet heartbeat. It surprised her how natural it felt to play something she had not touched in so long. Her breathing matched the rhythm, slow, even. She could feel her earlier fear melting away. It was like stepping into a space she knew well, but had been afraid to enter again. Now, the crowd was completely silent. Not a shuffle, not a whisper, not even a quiet cough. They sat still, eyes fixed on her, trying to understand how someone who didn't even want to play a simple tune now played, something filled with emotion. She didn't try to make it perfect. She didn't try to show skill. She just followed what her heart asked her to play. And that made the music feel alive, that her fingers climbed gently up the keys before sliding back down in a soft, smooth arc. A few people in the crowd leaned forward without realizing it. The melody held something familiar, something human, something honest. The hall felt warmer now, not because of the lights, but because of the emotion filling the space. She felt it too. Each note carried a feeling she had pushed away for years' fear, longing, hope, all woven quietly into the sound. Then, slowly, her hands moved into a new section, a part with a little more strength. The notes lifted like a small wind rising. She wasn't trying to surprise anyone. She wasn't trying to show anyone anything. She simply let the music guide her dot in her mind. She remembered the person she used to be, the one who played without worrying about mistakes, the one who felt free through music, the one who believed the piano could hold any feeling without judgment. The memory hit her quietly but deeply, and for a moment her eyes grew warm. She blinked, steadying her breath, and kept playing. She didn't realize how much time had passed. What was supposed to be a few seconds of simple notes had turned into something much longer, something meaningful. Her friend could see that she wasn't just playing. She was reconnecting with a part of herself she thought she had lost. The audience didn't know her story, but they could feel the emotion. Sometimes feelings don't need words. Sometimes a melody carries them better. Her hands slowly softened the sound again, bringing the music down to a gentler shape. The notes floated lightly through the air, almost like they were landing softly around the room. Her breathing slowed. The tension in her shoulders eased completely. She felt strangely peaceful, as if playing those notes had opened a window she didn't know she needed. Finally, her fingers came to a quiet stop on the last note. It rang out soft and warm, hanging in the still air for a moment. She didn't lift her hands right away. She let the last sound fade naturally, as if saying goodbye. Then she slowly placed her hands on her lap. The hall remained frozen, not because they were confused, but because they were stunned. She had walked up to play something small, yet what they heard was something honest and full of feeling. She let out a quiet breath and looked down at the keys. She didn't know what had just happened. She didn't know why her heart had pulled her into that melody. She only knew that for the first time in years, she felt alive in a way she had forgotten, and the silence behind her told her that she wasn't the only one who felt it. For a long moment, she stayed seated at the piano, unsure what to do next. The final note of her playing had already faded into silence, but the stillness in the hall remained. It was almost as if the entire room was unsure whether it was allowed to breathe again. She stared down at the keys, her fingers resting lightly on her lap, trying to understand what had just happened. She had not planned any of it. She had walked onto that stage, expecting to play a simple tune and leave. But something inside her had awakened the moment her fingers touched the keys. It felt like a quiet door inside her had opened, letting out feelings she had pushed away for too long. Finally, she lifted her head. The room was full of people staring at her with wide eyes. Some leaned forward. Some sat frozen, hands clasped. Some simply looked stunned. Her heart beat faster again, but it wasn't the same fear as before. This time it felt like a soft tremble of uncertainty. Had she done something wrong? Had she gone too far? Had she broken the host's request? She swallowed and slowly stood up from the bench. The wooden floor under her shoes felt louder than it should have, like the whole room could hear every step she took. Her hands felt cold again, and she rubbed them together gently as she looked around. One person finally clapped. Just one. But that one clap opened the door for everyone else. Within seconds, the entire hall erupted into a warm wave of applause. Not loud or wild, not chaotic. It was steady, strong, and full of a quiet respect that made her breath catch. She didn't know what to do. She wasn't used to being the center of attention. She bowed her head slightly, unsure if it was the right thing to do, and then stepped away from the piano. The host walked toward her with a look of pure surprise mixed with admiration. "That was unexpected," the host said softly, not wanting the microphone to catch the words. "You didn't just play a simple melody. You shared something real." She didn't know how to respond. She gave a small smile, one that felt shy and apologetic at the same time. "I only meant to play a little," she whispered back. The host nodded gently. "Sometimes the heart plays more than we plan." Somehow those words made her chest tighten. She wasn't sure why, but they felt true. She stepped off the stage carefully, her legs feeling slightly unsteady. As she walked toward the back of the hall, people reached out to her with kind smiles. Some gave small nods. Others whispered things like, "Beautiful," and that was amazing. She felt her face grow warm, and she kept lowering her eyes, hoping not to draw even more attention. Her friend stood up from the seat, completely stunned. "Where did that come from?" The friend whispered, grabbing her arm gently. She let out a soft breath. "I don't know. I didn't mean to play all that." Her friends shook their heads slowly. "You didn't mean to, but you did." And everyone felt it. She sat down again, her heartbeat slowly returning to normal. But inside her chest, something else continued to stir. A mixture of fear, relief, and something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. The rest of the night continued, but she barely heard anything. Performers went back on stage. Instruments filled the hall with different sounds, and people clapped politely after each performance. But she sat quiet, her mind drifting back to the moment her hands had moved freely across the keys. She kept wondering where that melody had come from. She hadn't played it in years. Maybe never exactly like that. It felt like her heart had spoken before her mind could stop it. Her friend leaned close, again halfway through the next performance. "You should play again sometime," they whispered. She shook her head. "I don't know. I wasn't supposed to play that much." "Maybe you were," the friend replied softly. She didn't answer. She couldn't. She wasn't sure what she believed anymore. When the event ended, the host spoke to the audience, thanking everyone for coming and supporting local talent. Then, in a moment she wasn't ready for, the host glanced toward her and smiled. "And thank you to the young woman who played earlier," the host said warmly. "Your music reminded us why these gatherings matter." A soft wave of applause rose again. She lowered her head, embarrassed, but touched Dot as people began to leave. Several approached her, each one with something kind to say. Your playing felt real. It was like you were telling a story. I haven't heard something that peaceful in a long time. She nodded politely, offering soft thanks. But inside, she felt overwhelmed. She didn't want so much attention. She didn't want to be seen too deeply. Yet a part of her couldn't deny that the warmth of their words felt good unexpected, but good. When she finally stepped outside the hall, the cool night air brushed against her face. She took in a deep breath and felt her chest loosen a little. The sky was dark, but small lights from nearby buildings made the night feel calm. Dot, her friend, walked beside her, hands in pockets. "You okay?" the friend asked gently. She nodded. "Just tired. From playing?" "From feeling," she admitted. Dot, her friend, gave a small smile. "Then maybe that's the kind of tired you needed." They walked to the car slowly. She opened the door, paused, and glanced back at the hall. Through the glass windows, she could still see the piano on the stage, quiet and still. For years, she had avoided playing. She had told herself she didn't need it anymore, that she was fine without it. But tonight had shown her something she hadn't expected. A part of her wasn't just connected to music. It was made of it. Dot, as she sat in the car, she rested her forehead lightly against the window. Her mind replayed the melody she had created. She remembered how natural it felt, how comforting, how freeing. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "Why did I stop?" Her friend heard it. "Maybe life got heavy," the friend said softly. "But maybe it's lighter now." She didn't know if that was true, but the thought stayed with her. The ride home was quiet. She kept her eyes on the passing lights and listened to the faint echo of her own music in her mind. The more she listened, the more she realized something small had shifted inside her tonight. When she reached her home, she paused before stepping out of the car. Her friend looked at her with concern. "You sure you're okay?" they asked. Dot, she nodded slowly. "I think so. I'm just surprised." "Surprised by what you can do," her friend said. "Surprised that I felt something again." She corrected softly. Dot, her friend, didn't push her further. "Get some rest. You'll understand more tomorrow." She opened the door and stepped out. The night was cooler here, and the street was quiet. She walked toward her front door, feeling a strange mixture of calm and restlessness. Something in her was awake now, and she didn't know what it meant yet. Dot, as she entered her home and closed the door behind her, she leaned against it for a moment. She closed her eyes and let the silence wrap around her. Then, without meaning to, her fingers twitched slightly like they were still. Searching for the keys, she opened her eyes. Slowly, Dot, something inside her whispered that tonight wasn't just an unexpected moment. Dot, it was the beginning of something she had been avoiding for far too long. The next morning, she woke up earlier than usual. She lay in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand why her chest felt so full. It wasn't fear. It wasn't stress. It was something softer, something she hadn't felt in years, a quiet pull, like the start of a song she couldn't ignore. She turned onto her side and let out a long breath. The memories from the night before resurfaced one by one. The warm lights of the hall, the quiet attention of the crowd, the way her fingers had moved without effort, the melody she hadn't expected to play, and the deep, strange peace she felt in those moments. She placed her hand on her chest as if trying to steady the feeling. She didn't know what to call it, but she knew it wasn't going away. The house was silent. The morning sun peeked through the curtains, turning the room soft gold. She sat up slowly, rubbing her face. She had barely slept, but she didn't feel tired. Her mind had played the same tune over and over again while she tried to rest. No matter how she tried to push it away, the sound returned like a gentle reminder. She got out of bed, pulled on a comfortable sweater, and walked quietly into the living room. She stood there for a long moment, looking at the corner near the window. There, covered with a thin sheet, stood the old upright piano she hadn't touched in years. She had covered it long ago because she didn't want to see it. Every time her eyes fell on it, memories surfaced, some beautiful, some heavy. She had decided it was easier to ignore it and to face what had made her feel. Now, looking at it again, something shifted inside her. She walked over slowly, her fingers brushing the edge of the sheet. She hesitated. Part of her wanted to lift it. Part of her feared what might happen if she did. After a long pause, she pulled the sheet away. Dust floated in the air as the white fabric fell aside. The piano looked the same as it always had: smooth wood, slightly worn keys, small scratches from years of use. She placed her palm gently on the lid and felt a coldness that reminded her of everything she used to love and everything she had stepped away from. She opened the lid carefully, revealing the keys. Some had lost their color a little, but they still looked inviting, patient, like they had been waiting for her. She sat down slowly on the bench. Her hands rested quietly in her lap as she stared at the keys. Last night felt unreal, like a dream she wasn't sure belonged to her. But the more she remembered it, the more real it felt. The way the melody flowed, the calm that washed over her, the applause that followed. It wasn't just a moment. It was something she had been holding inside for too long. She lifted her hand and placed her fingers gently on the keys. She didn't press down, not yet. She just felt the cool surface beneath her skin. A soft breath escaped her. Then, slowly, she played a single note. It rang through the quiet room, gentle and warm. The sound wrapped around her like a soft blanket. She played another note, then another, letting her fingers explore gently. The melody from the night before returned naturally, as if her hands remembered it better than her mind did. She played it slowly, carefully, letting each sound stretch into the silence. The room felt alive again. As she played, memories rose like soft ripples in her mind, her younger self practicing late into the evening. Her first small performance in front of a group. The joy she felt when the piano seemed to speak, her feelings without needing words. But there were heavier memories too, the pressure, the expectations, the moment she walked away from it all because it felt too heavy to carry. She paused, letting her hands rest. The room was quiet again. She closed her eyes and took a long breath. Something inside her whispered that maybe the piano wasn't something she needed to avoid. Maybe it was something she needed to return to, but on her own terms, without pressure, without fear. She played again, this time letting her fingers wander freely. She didn't try to recreate the melody exactly. She just let the music come naturally. The notes blended softly, filling the room with a calm she desperately needed. She didn't notice how much time passed. She didn't see the morning sunlight rise higher through the window. All she felt was the quiet comfort of the keys beneath her fingers. When she finally stopped, her shoulders felt lighter. She rested her hands in her lap again and leaned back slightly. For the first time in years, the piano didn't feel like a weight. It felt like a place where she could breathe. Her phone buzzed suddenly, breaking the silence. She picked it up and saw a message from her friend. "Are you awake? I've been thinking about last night. You were amazing." She smiled a little, typing back, "I'm awake. And I'm thinking too." A reply came quickly. "Thinking about playing again?" She stared at the question. She didn't know how to answer it. She didn't want to make promises she couldn't keep. But she also didn't want to ignore the feeling building inside her after a long pause. She typed, "Maybe. I played a little this morning." There was a long pause before her friend replied, "I knew it meant something to you. You just needed to remember." She placed the phone aside and looked at the piano again. It felt different now, not like something from her past, but something she might carry into her future. Later in the afternoon, she stepped outside for some fresh air. The streets were calm, and the cool breeze brushed gently against her hair. She walked slowly, thinking, letting her mind wander through the emotions she hadn't let herself feel in years. As she passed a small cafe, she heard music drifting out from the doorway. Someone was playing softly inside. She paused and listened. The notes were simple, warm, comforting, something anyone could enjoy. The sound made her smile. She stepped inside, took a seat near the window, and ordered a warm drink. As she sipped, she watched the musician play. They weren't performing for applause. They were simply enjoying the music. And the people sitting around them looked peaceful, as if the sound had given them a moment of calm in their day. She realized then what she missed most about music. It wasn't the skill or the practice or the achievements. It was the quiet connection it created between people. Music didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to be honest. She stayed for a while, listening, warming her hands on the cup. When she finally left, she walked home with a clearer mind. That evening, she sat again at her piano. This time, she didn't hesitate. She lifted the lid, placed her fingers on the keys, and let the melody flow. It wasn't loud. It wasn't complicated, but it was hers. Each note felt like a step toward something new. She didn't know where this path would lead her. She didn't know if she would ever perform again, or if last night had been a one-time moment. But she knew she wasn't afraid anymore. The piano wasn't a closed chapter. It was a part of her story that she was finally ready to reopen. And as she played softly into the evening, she felt for the first time that she wasn't just remembering who she used to be. She was beginning to discover who she could become. She stood there for a moment after the hall fell silent, trying to understand what had just happened. Her hands were still slightly shaking, not from fear now, but from the energy of the music she had just played. It felt as if something inside her had finally opened after being locked away for years. She lifted her eyes slowly, unsure of what she would see, and was surprised to find that every person in the room was still staring at her. For a few seconds, nobody moved. People looked almost frozen, as if they were trying to figure out how someone who had been sitting quietly at the back could suddenly play with so much emotion. She wondered if she had scared them or gone too far. She had only wanted to play something she felt in the moment. She didn't plan to go beyond the simple tune the host had asked for, but once her fingers touched the keys, her heart just took over. Then, all at once, the silence broke. Someone clapped, then another, and then the whole room joined in, their applause echoing off the walls like a wave that washed over her. The sound grew louder and warmer, not rushed, not forced, but grateful. The kind of applause that comes when people feel something deeply and don't know how else to express it. She stood up awkwardly, unsure of what to do. She wasn't used to attention. Even the applause made her blush a little. She gave a small nod, trying to thank them without saying anything, because she didn't trust her voice. Not to shake. Her friend rushed toward the stage first, excitement showing in every step. "You didn't tell me you could play like that," her friend said, half whispering, half shouting. Why were you hiding this? She looked down, a small smile forming. I wasn't hiding it. I just stopped playing for a long time. I didn't think anyone cared. Her friends shook their head. Well, they care now. Look at them. People began to gather near the stage, not crowding her but waiting politely, hoping for a moment to talk to her. Some wanted to know where she learned to play. Others wanted to know what the piece was called. A few simply said thank you, explaining how her music reminded them of something warm, or something lost, or something hopeful. She listened quietly, trying to take in each word without feeling overwhelmed. For years she had carried her music like a secret, unsure of whether it meant anything to anyone. She had never imagined that strangers could feel so much from something she played. The event host approached her with a look she hadn't seen before. It wasn't surprise anymore. It was admiration. I asked you for a simple melody, the host said with a gentle laugh. You gave us something far beyond that. I don't think anyone here will forget this evening. She didn't know what to say, so she just smiled again. Hoping it was enough, the host continued. If you're open to it, I would like you to return for our next event. Not for a demonstration, not for a small tune. I want you to perform as one of our main guests. I think people would love to hear more from you. Her eyes widened slightly. She had never performed at any event before, not even in school. The idea of playing on purpose, in front of a crowd, felt unreal. But at the same time, there was a warmth inside her chest that she hadn't felt in years. A feeling that maybe she had been waiting for something like this without even knowing. I'll think about it, she said softly. Thank you. The host nodded, understanding she needed a moment to process everything. She stepped down from the small stage and walked toward the back of the hall where her seat still waited, the cushion slightly tilted from when she jumped up earlier. Sitting down, she breathed out slowly, trying to calm her racing thoughts. Her friend sat beside her. You look like someone who just discovered a new part of herself, her friend said. She thought about it. Maybe it was true. Maybe she had discovered something she had lost and found again all in one night. I think I forgot how much I loved playing, she said softly. When I started, it was just something I enjoyed. But then life got busy, and I kept telling myself I'd come back to it one day. I didn't realize how long that one day had been. Her friend nudged her gently. Well, it came back tonight. And you didn't just play, you touched everyone here. I think you should keep going. She looked around the hall. People were still talking about her performance, even though the next person had already taken the stage. She saw small groups pointing toward the piano, speaking in low, excited voices. She saw the host smiling proudly. And she saw a few people who looked like they wished she would play again. For the first time in a long while, she felt like her place wasn't in the background. She felt like maybe she had something to offer. As the event continued, people came up to her one by one, each sharing a small story or a few kind words. Some talked about their own experiences with music. Others said they had never seen someone play with so much emotion. A few said her performance made them think of someone they missed. She listened to all of them, realizing how powerful a simple melody could become when played with heart. When the event finally ended, she stepped outside into the cool night air. The sky above was quiet, a soft mix of stars and clouds. Her friend walked beside her, and the two of them began heading home. She looked at her hands. They still felt warm from playing. It amazed her how a single moment, something so unexpected, could shift the direction of a person's life. She took a deep breath, letting the night breeze calm her thoughts. Maybe I will come back next time, she said. Her friend smiled. You should. If tonight showed anything, it's that your music isn't just for you. It's meant to be heard. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked ahead, imagining what it might feel like to sit at that piano again on purpose, not by accident, not by challenge, but because she wanted to. She realized that she wasn't afraid of being seen anymore. Not tonight. Something inside her had changed not as they continued walking. She felt lighter, as if her steps carried a quiet hope. She didn't know exactly what would happen next, but she knew one thing clearly. She had found her music again, and this time she wasn't going to let it fade away.